I will not tolerate such behavior. If you want to go out now. But if you stand again, I'll lure you out. Make your mind up and then shut up and get out. Breaking. The Prime Minister just got thrown out of his own parliament on live TV in front of the entire world, and it took exactly 7 words to make it happen. What you're about to see is the most shocking political meltdown in modern British history. No edits, no cuts, just pure chaos captured in real time. And before this is over, you'll see why everything in UK politics just changed forever. Quick thing, if you want the full story on how power collapses this fast, hit subscribe now, because what comes next will blow your mind. Wednesday, 12:15 p.m. Parliament. The chamber is full. Cameras rolling. Prime Minister's questions is about to start. This is routine. This happens every week. MPs take their seats. The nation tunes in. Everything looks normal. But in exactly 3 minutes, 300 years of tradition is about to shatter. Nigel Farage stands up. The Reform UK leader has been waiting for this exact moment. He's got leaked documents. He's got numbers. And he's got one very specific accusation. But here's what's different. Farage isn't yelling. He's not waving papers around. His voice is quiet, controlled, almost cold. Mr. Speaker, he begins. The Prime Minister promised to stop the boats. Instead, we've had 45,000 illegal crossings this year alone. Deportation flights, can-led. Hotels costing taxpayers £8 million every single day. And now leaked documents show secret talks with Brussels about rejoining EU migration schemes. Every single word lands like a punch. Starmer's face goes tight. Labour MPs shift in their seats. This isn't a debate. This is an interrogation. Farage keeps going. The British people voted for border control. They voted for sovereignty. What they got was betrayal, wrapped up as kindness. So tell me, Prime Minister, when will you admit your policies have completely failed? The room goes dead silent. Harsh, yes, but still within the rules until it isn't. Without waiting to be called, Prime Minister Keir Starmer shoots up from his seat. His finger stabs across the room. His voice cracks with raw anger. How dare you? How dare you lecture this government on compassion when all you do is spread hate? The chamber freezes. Veterans who've sat through decades of heated arguments stare in shock. This isn't passion. This is a breakdown. Starmer's voice climbs higher. You have no right to talk about British values when you've spent your entire career tearing this country apart. You are a disgrace to this chamber. Speaker Lindsay Hoy cuts in immediately. The Prime Minister will resume his seat and address the chamber properly. But Starmer ignores him. He steps forward, red-faced, arms flailing. This man has no business questioning our policies when he can't even keep his own party together. Hill's voice slices through like ice. The Prime Minister will sit down now. Starmer keeps raging. The most powerful man in Britain is losing it. Live on camera, in front of millions. And then the Speaker does something almost nobody alive has ever seen. Standing Order 43. The chamber goes completely silent. This is an ancient rule. It gives the Speaker total authority to remove any member of Parliament who refuses to keep order, including the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is directed to leave the chamber immediately. Starmer freezes. You can't be serious. I am completely serious. High replies. His voice is flat. Final. This chamber will not accept personal attacks instead of real debate. Security escort the Prime Minister out. Audible gasps. Camera shutters Fire, like gunshots. Two security officers walk towards the Prime Minister. Starmer looks around desperately. Nobody moves. Not even his own MPs. They won't even look at him. This is outrageous, he mutters. But there's no strength left in his voice. The officers guide him toward the exit. His shoulders drop. His power drains away with every step. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom walks out of Parliament, escorted like a troublemaker thrown out of a bar. Then Nigel Farage speaks again, still calm, still measured. This is what happens when politicians can't defend their failures. They explode, they break down. But the British people need leadership, not tantrums. The difference is brutal. One man in total control, one man in complete ruins. 60 seconds later, the footage hits social media. 5 minutes later, PM thrown out is trending worldwide. 1 hour later, it's the top story on every news network. CNN, BBC, a laser, Sky News, everyone. The numbers don't lie. Star's approval rating drops 15 points overnight. In Labour's northern heartlands, the places that used to love him, the anger is vicious. Radio call-ins explode. If he can't control himself in Parliament, how can he run the country? One caller shouts, "Breaking King Charles just declared war on his own Prime Minister." And what happened 90 minutes ago may have ended Keir Starmer's career forever. This morning at 7:14 a.m., Buckingham Palace released a statement so cold it made veteran journalists reread it 3 times. For the first time in modern history, King Charles openly challenged the conduct of sitting government officials, demanding they safeguard the dignity of the crown. No names, no apologies, just ICE. If you want the full breakdown of what happens next, hit subscribe because this story is about to explode. Within 8 minutes, Westminster went nuclear. Screenshots flooded Twitter. Labour MPs panic texted each other. One senior journalist called it a velvet glove punch straight to Downing Street's throat. Inside number 10, witnesses say Starmer stormed into his office, tore up briefing notes, and shouted he wouldn't be lectured by a man wearing a crown. His advisors are now polishing their CVs. But the statement wasn't even the real weapon. 22 minutes later, the palace confirmed something far more dangerous. An emergency Privy Council session. The last time a monarch called one during a political crisis. Before the internet, before television, practically before electricity. Constitutional experts immediately said what everyone was thinking, but too terrified to admit the king is preparing to use powers modern Britain pretends don't exist. Starmer knew exactly what that meant. Desperate to regain control, he scheduled a press. The plan looked calm, statesmanlike, above the chaos. Instead, he looked like a man drowning. The cameras turned on. He opened his mouth, and for 5 full seconds broadcast live across the nation, nothing came out. Social media turned it into a slow-motion humiliation. Real. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, sources say Charles was meeting with senior legal advisors, thumbing through centuries-old documents, discussing options so extreme that previous monarchs refused to even speak them aloud. Powers not invoked since King's war armor were suddenly on the table. Westminster freaked out so hard that Tory and Labour backbenchers actually agreed on something for the first time in years. Starmer had pushed too far, and the king was done playing the quiet observer. Nigel Farage saw the moment instantly. He uploaded a 40-second video. No theatrics, no smile. Just one line delivered with terrifying calm. The crown deserves respect, and the British people know it. 1 million views. Before breakfast. Now, the entire nation is asking what power is King Charles about to use against the sitting Prime Minister? And how far is he willing to go to defend the monarchy? Because his next move might not just end Starmer's career. It might redraw the British Constitution itself. What happened next blindsided everyone. While Starmer's team scrambled to contain the fallout, Charles was already 3 steps ahead. Behind the stone walls of Buckingham Palace, a second meeting convened, not with ceremonial advisors, but with constitutional scholars, former Supreme Court judges, and 2 retired military chiefs whose presence alone signaled the gravity of what was unfolding. Sources say the king opened with a single sentence that froze the room. It appears the stability of the realm can no longer be assumed. No monarch had used words like that in a century. While they debated legal boundaries and historical precedences, Charles remained unerringly calm, sipping tea, listening to decades of constitutional expertise collide in front of him. Meanwhile, chaos in Downing Street only darkened as news of the emergency meetings leaked. Drip by drip, Labour MPs started openly questioning whether Starmer had become too toxic to defend. Anonymous briefings painted a portrait of a leader unraveling. One insider claimed he hadn't slept in 36 hours. Another said he'd become paranoid enough to accuse his own staff of conspiring with the palace. Then the final blow landed. The cabinet secretary, Britain's most senior civil servant, requested an unscheduled face-to-face meeting with Starr. That never happens unless something is catastrophically wrong. Rumors flew that he warned the Prime Minister his position was becoming untenable. While Starmer spiraled, Charles made his boldest move yet. He scheduled a private conversation with the Archbishop of Canterbury. For most people, that wouldn't mean much. But in constitutional terms, that's the equivalent of pulling the pin on a grenade. The Archbishop isn't just a religious figure. He's a moral authority, with influence stretching deep into Parliament, the military, and the public conscience. When a king talks to an archbishop during a political crisis, it signals one thing: the monarch is preparing to justify action. And justification is the one weapon the tick doesn't need Parliament's permission to use. By midday, whispers of extraordinary royal intervention slithered through Westminster corridors. MPs walked around like the walls themselves were listening. Speculation spread that Charles could formally reprimand the Prime Minister, issue a constitutional directive, or, in the most extreme scenario, request Starmer's resignation. To make matters worse for Downing Street, the public mood had shifted violently. Polls released at noon showed 62% of voters believe the king was right to respond firmly. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, waving Union Jacks, chanting, "Protect the Crown." It looked less like a protest and more like a coronation parade fueled by national anxiety. Reform UK surged again. Farage delivered another blow with a devastating line, broadcast from a pub in Kent. If the Prime Minister cannot respect the monarchy, he cannot respect the people. Even traditional Labour voters couldn't dismiss it. In Manchester, a lifelong Labour activist told Sky News, "I voted for Starr to steady the country, not to start a war with the king." As public support shifted toward the palace, the pressure inside Downing Street became uncontainable. Then, at 4:03 p.m., Charles delivered his true strike, the one that sent the political class into shock. He requested a personal meeting with Starmer, not a phone call, not a briefing, a face-to-face confrontation. That hasn't happened in modern times. Under circumstances this hostile. It was the moment Westminster had feared. The monarch stepping directly into the Prime Minister's arena. Insiders say Starmer went pale when the message arrived. Half his cabinet insisted he attend. The other half warned the king might demand his resignation on the spot. When Starmer finally arrived at Buckingham Palace, escorted through a side entrance. To avoid cameras, the tension was suffocating. He was led into the white drawing room where King Charles was. Already standing, not seated, not relaxed, waiting with the posture of a man who had made up his mind long before the meeting began. The moment the door closed, the king spoke first. No greetings, no small talk, no diplomatic cushioning. Witnesses with knowledge of the conversation say Charles delivered a line that will be quoted in history books for generations. Prime Minister, the dignity of this nation cannot survive another day of your chaos. 13 words, harder than any blow Starmer had taken from Parliament, the public, or even his own cabinet. According to sources, Starmer tried to defend himself, insisting he'd been provoked, pressured, misinterpreted. But the king interrupted him, something monarchs almost never do. Charles wasn't angry. That's what made it terrifying. He was calm, cold, surgical. He reportedly laid out a list of concerns: collapsing public confidence, escalating political instability, international embarrassment, and what he called Starmer's dangerous abandonment of constitutional respect. Then came the part that shook Downing Street to its foundation. Multiple insiders confirmed Charles invoked a rarely used constitutional phrase, the preservation of national stability. Oh, the same phrase monarchs have historically used when pressuring prime ministers to resign. It wasn't a demand, but it was close enough that Starmer instantly understood the gravity of his situation. He left the meeting pale, shaken, visibly rattled, refusing to answer questions from his own staff. Within minutes, the palace walls sprouted leaks. Every newsroom in London received the same whispered message. The king rebuked the prime minister directly and questioned his ability to continue governing. That was the spark that ignited the explosion. Labour MPs, who had been on the fence, instantly turned against Starmer. Senior ministers began drafting coordinated resignation letters. Half the cabinet scheduled late night meetings. And in the shadows of Parliament's committee rooms, MPs openly discussed the one word nobody expected to hear this year: replacement. As the political class panicked, Starmer attempted one last move to salvage his leadership. He rushed to prepare a national address, a speech meant to calm the public, restore order, convince the country he wasn't at war with the crown. But even that collapsed around him. Just hours before he was set to speak, a final blow landed like thunder. A leaked memo revealed the king was planning to deliver a televised statement of his own, a nationwide address to the British people. The last time a monarch prepared something like this during a political crisis was nearly a century ago. That simple revelation shredded what remained of Starmer's authority. MPs whispered that if Charles went on air before the Prime Minister did, it would be the end. Some said it already was. Crowds began gathering outside both Downing Street and Buckingham Palace. Phones raised, waiting for updates. Social media feeds blurred into one stream of speculation, disbelief, and breathless commentary. Reform UK supporters chanted victory messages. Even Conservative MPs, otherwise silent, privately admitted this was the moment the monarchy had stepped back into British political life, not as a symbol, but as a force. Late into the night, as London glowed with strange electric tension, Starmer's closest advisors delivered the news he'd been dreading. He no longer had the numbers to survive a leadership challenge. The King's subtle pressure, delivered in a single private meeting, had achieved what no opposition party, no scandal, no election loss could do. It broke a Prime Minister. Now all of Britain is staring at the same question. Will Starmer resign quietly at dawn? Or will he attempt to defy both Parliament and the Crown in one last desperate act of political survival? Drop your prediction in the comments. And if you want to see what King Charles says when he finally steps in front of those cameras, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because when that national address drops, the entire country will be watching.